All right, we come to our third reflection, and it comes from it comes from St. Paul, who said that, in the end, only three things last: faith, hope, and charity, or love. And he said the greatest of these is love. Yeah, it's interesting. He didn't mention faith is the greatest or hope is the greatest, but love is the greatest. And in that great, Paul in the great famous writing of Corinthians, he never defined it, and he didn't define it. He described it. And we take 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, the one that everybody uses for their weddings. He never defined what love was. He just described it. And even St. Augustine said, I don't know how to define it. I know what it looks like. I can tell you what it looks like, but he couldn't define it. The only definition I remember is the great philosopher Thomas Aquinas. He said that to love is to work hard to bring out the best in the other. That was his definition. And that's probably what really motivated Vincent to list this virtue of charity for all of us, for the ladies, for the daughters, and the Vincentian fathers and brothers, was that that is the one thing that we must have. If we do have that, then the poor have a chance. The alienated have a chance. The orphan has a chance. All those people, the homeless, the sick, the dying, they all have a chance because we are so moved by that virtue to love. And it's difficult because we all want it. We want to be loved and we want to love. Those are the two great motivating factors in my life, and I'm sure yours too, is that we want to love and we want to be loved. Just imagine all the poor people. I always mention this, and when I talk about this particular virtue of charity, when you ladies of charity, many of you work in thrift shops and you work in homeless shelters, you work in food pantries. When you go there and you do that, I know when you come home how good you feel. You feel absolutely terrific. You visit someone in the nursing home, or you go to the hospital, or you go to the food pantry in the homeless shelter. When you do that, you go home feeling so good. And because you know that is what Vincent called you to do. I always ask the question, that feeling you get, how does the poor get that? How do they get that feeling? I am convinced now they get it because they actually give us the gift. They let us help them. They give us the gift. So when Vincent was well aware of this virtue of charity, that's what he was thinking about. He's thinking that, we but never forget that they're giving us a gift. They allow us to help them. And so when I think of this third virtue, sure it comes from that challenge from the scriptures, from Jesus. But it is, in my opinion, it's the heart of what it means to be a Vincentian. You talked about faith, hope, and charity. This is just a little thing you can think about in faith, hope, and charity. I got examples of it. Faith is when you applaud a boring speaker before he talks. Hope is when you applaud a boring speaker during his talk. And charity is applauding a boring speaker after he's finished. But I'll tell you what the beauty of those examples are. The applauding is for that person to make their life better. And as Dick talked about the definition of love, it strikes me that charitable people are people who love because the other is important. I want to make the other's life better. So then the gift then is, I want to make your life better. And so I laugh when I think about, those examples of faith, hope, and charity, but there's so much truth to that. Just to be able to make somebody else feel good. And I think humble, simple ways are what's the most magnificent. You don't need, to hand out $1 million to somebody. Maybe it's just $1 to somebody who's asking for $1. Maybe it's just, you know what? I'm going to do something. They don't even know I did it. They don't even know. Doesn't matter. I always tell that to, because I have some friends who say, you can't be just giving out money all the time. You can't do that. You don't know what they're going to do with that. And my answer always the same. I don't care. It's about me giving. That's where real charity and love is. It's in my giving. Why do I worry about what he does with it? That's why I have to tell you, I'm a regifter. Okay? And I have no problem if you regift. Because the issue is I gave you a gift. You should be able to do whatever you want because it's you that's important. And I think that's what I find in the whole understanding of charity and love is how important the other is. And Vincent would even say, they're more important than me. That's why charity is the groundbreaking move that anybody could have, especially if you're a minister and you care. So yeah, I really believe that it's that focus on the other. It's a gift. I always tell this the story that Jesus, he tricked the Jewish people, the Jewish lawyers, and he said, that 10 Commandments is too many, way too many. And they got really excited because he said, no, 10 that's too many. So they got excited. He said, listen, I'm just going to give you 2. And that's all I'm going to do. Just all you got to do is these 2. So they are so excited to hear the 2. And he said, here are the 2. Love God with everything you have. Your heart, your soul, your mind, everything. And secondly, love your neighbor as yourself. Now the reason he tricked them is you can't do those 2 without doing the other 8. You got to do all 10 to be able to do that. You cannot love God and stay home and not go to church. So he was tricking them, But there's a great message in that. Love God with everything you got and love your neighbor as yourself. That really is the challenge that Jesus put to us. And maybe that's the key for us in remembering that when he told us that's what he had in mind. He wanted us to love. He wanted us to love God and love neighbor. Sometimes we forget that we're on this earth for a certain reason. There's only one of you, one of me. There'll never be another. And there's a reason for that. We're not here for us. We're here for others. And the one story that comes to mind is the great leader Gandhi from India. They wore those long white togas, and then they had sandals. And I never been on, but I understand that the transportation was train. And you had hundreds of people, and they just jumped down. They just jumped down the train. I don't know how the conductor took the tickets. They just jumped down. But this particular time, he was with 3 or 4 people, and he was waiting, and everybody was jumping on. He finally jumped down. He was on the last car in the back of the train, and as he jumped onto the train, his sandal fell off. So here he is in the last car. The train's leaving, and he's staring at this sandal. And he's just staring, and all of a sudden, he took his other foot and he kicked the other sandal off. And the people around him said, what are you doing? He said, when the guy finds the first one, it ain't going to do him any good unless he got the second one. Now, sometimes I think about I lose something, I got to go find the match for it. The whole thought was him. the guy who finds it ain't going to do him any good. And I just think sometimes we forget how great people are when they live their life by love. And I'm just so moved and inspired by you ladies of charity, because look what your name is, Lady of Charity. Your title is you are known by your love. And even as it all began for the Ladies of Charity, St. Vincent, on his way to his local church, and he's got this big homily all ready to give. He's all excited about what he's going to preach about. But on the way, he finds out a family who's in need, not well, they got issues, sickness. He scraps his homily and he just asks, we need some volunteers. We need some people to help. 50 women. They signed up, in a way. They signed up, like the Ladies of Charity today. It began because of a concern for the other. It began because of a sense of love and charity. And that's why we've appreciated the invitation that you gave us to share our reflections on 3 virtues that are at the heart of Vincent spirituality. Humble people care. Humble people are thankful. They do things in a simple way. In the littlest ways, sometimes nobody even knows who did that. And then they can be people who genuinely love and are charitable people. Thanks for the invite.